To really understand why Greenstracks made these specific and, let's be honest, often harsh rankings, we have to look at their musical foundation first.
Their origin story.
Exactly. The specific era that shaped their listening habits and, crucially, set their internal subjective standard for what defines lasting album quality.
And that foundation, it's the lens through which every single album in this quest is filtered. Greenstracks notes that they started listening to entire albums, front to back from a very early age.
Right.
Right in the heart of what they call the luminary 80s albums era. And this decade, it's characterized by these high production values maturing artists.
Yeah.
It really established their benchmark for sophisticated, enduring quality.
And when you look at the benchmark albums they actually cite, you immediately get it. You understand the immense pressure that's placed on every contender in this quest.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about masterpieces like Peter Gabriel's
Last.
Fleetwood Mac's Tango in the Night, Pink Floyd's Momentary Lapse of Reason,
Paul Simon's Graceland, Kate Bush's Hounds of Love.
It's an incredible list.
If that group represents your foundational standard, you are not going to be impressed by anything less than complex composition, impeccable craftsmanship, and a depth that, rewards repeated listening.
Right.
These albums are all defined by artistic innovation, coupled with meticulous engineering. And this instantly tells you that the author is likely going to prioritize technical refinement and deep lyrical themes over, say, raw, unpolished energy.
Or just transient chart success.
Exactly. And that high standard is particularly relevant when we get to dissecting the ranking of the two most commercially successful albums in this group, Bryan Adams and Eminem.
Beyond the albums themselves, the physical medium that really dictated the author's early intimate relationship with music.
Yes.
They detail the evolution of music consumption, and it paints this really deeply nostalgic picture of their journey as a listener.
Well, the earliest stage involved their father's extensive LP collection.
Yeah.
But the consumption, it wasn't direct vinyl play. Yep. It was defined by magnetic tape. They had to actively copy those LPs onto tapes. This wasn't passive listening. It required, intentional curation, selection, and the physical act of dubbing.
You were literally crafting your own version of the album experience.
You were. And we get that deeply specific, grounding detail that anyone who grew up in the mid-'80s will recognize.
The tape deck?
The author's modest tape deck served a crucial dual purpose. It doubled as a games loader for my ZX Spectrum.
I love that detail. It's an image that connects music fandom directly to the physical hardware constraints of the time, where even your entertainment media was all interconnected.
That dual-use device signifies a less disposable era where equipment had to serve multiple vital functions.
And this physical history, it just keeps going through their first purchases, marking these pivotal milestones in their independent listening.
They were called their Tony Basil's Mickey. And the fact that they still own both of them just demonstrates this profound dedication to preserving those foundational moments.
Then came the first big, pre-recorded, commercially slick purchase bought from Woolworths.
I remember Woolworths.
Michael Jackson's bad. And they say they were thoroughly obsessed during middle school. That album, it's a peak of polished 80s pop perfection. It would have just reinforced that standard set by the Luminary albums.
Absolutely. High gloss, massive hooks, world-class production.
And that leads directly into the biggest technological shift of the 90s.
The CD revolution.
The CD revolution. Their 13th birthday gift was the Holy Grail, a mini system complete with a stereo, a tape deck, and a 3 CD changer.
That was freedom. No more tape hiss, no more copying. It was just instant, pristine, high-fidelity access.
And the very first CDs chosen to inaugurate this new era. First, Genesis's We Can't Dance, and critically one of the albums in contention today, Bryan Adams' Waking Up the Neighbours.
And this is so key.
It's huge.
The author chose this album to launch their entire CD listening life. The emotional connection, the nostalgia, the sheer weight of personal history associated with Waking Up the Neighbours is immense.
It creates this enormous internal conflict that we have to acknowledge before we even get to the ranking.
Definitely. For Greenstracks to objectively assess this record, they have to fight against 3 decades of ingrained positive association.
So when this album ultimately ranks third and gets eliminated, it's not just a critical decision. It is, in a way, an emotional sacrifice made in service of the quest's ultimate goal.
Right. The author must be extremely rigorous in their critical standard to overcome that level of intense, positive personal history.
Okay, so as we transition into the actual competition, we have to remember this is round 2, Group 40. These albums are already winners.
Yeah, they survived their initial round one groupings, often against fierce and, critically acclaimed opposition. Knowing their qualifying paths establishes just how high the competitive bar is for this group.
It's basically the musical playoffs at this point. You've already proven your worth.
Exactly.
So let's look at how the two qualifiers, Nick Kershaw and Clannad, first earned their spots. Kershaw's Radio Musicola won its initial fight in round 1, Group 12.
And he won against a very diverse field. Radio Musicola took the top spot over Alanis Morissette's post-peak but still strong album, Under Rug Swept.
Oh, tell a great album.
The instrumental soundtrack Transformers by Vince Dicola, which is a foundational piece of 80s instrumental Rockin' Rainbow's hard-rocking rising.
Wow. So to beat Alanis Morissette, an artist known for deep, complex lyrical work, that suggests Kershaw's compositional quality was immediately apparent and superior in that early group.
It does.
And what about Clannad? Their atmospheric landmarks qualified from round 1, Group 32, and again took the #1 position.
Yeah. Landmarks edged out a later Rainbow album, Stranger in Us All, the polished blues rock of Whitesnake's Restless Heart, and crucially, another Bryan Adams album.
Which one?
Cuts Like a Knife. And this is really important comparative data. Clannad had already demonstrated its superiority over an earlier Bryan Adams effort, establishing a precedent for quality over mainstream rock polish in the author's rankings.
That's a great point. Okay, now for the two albums that qualified but ultimately face elimination in this round. Bryan Adams' Waking Up. The Neighbours qualified from round 1, Group 45.
It did, but it secured second place. It qualified behind the sheer weight of Led Zeppelin II, which...
I mean, well, there's no shame in that.
Absolutely not. It's a monumental achievement in rock history.
Yeah.
But it did qualify ahead of Stan Bush's Dial and Def Leppard's early effort, On Through the Night.
So beating out Def Leppard proves the technical, world-class production of the Adams album was undeniable.
For sure.
And finally, Eminem. The Slim Shady LP was in round 1, Group 132, and he actually won his group outright.
Yes, his debut won. It qualified ahead of two very significant late 90s albums, Faithless's critically acclaimed electronic masterpiece Reverence, Everything But, The Girl's deeply textured Walking Wounded, and Faith No More's We Care a Lot. The fact that Eminem beat out such strong, diverse, and often critically lauded 90s albums.
It just shows that the initial impact and the production quality of the Slim Shady LP was massive.
It was. So all four contenders enter Group 40 with serious pedigree, making the eliminations all the more rigorous.
We begin our discussion of the eliminations at the very bottom. In 4th place, we have Eminem's debut, the Slim Shady LP. And this is genuinely shocking for a listener. It's a landmark album, yet it's ranked last, eliminated by the Album Quest.
It is a massive statement, and it hinges entirely on the author's relentless pursuit of an artist's peak output. The core critique is damning.
What is it?
This debut pales in comparison to all of Eminem's subsequent albums by some margin. So Greenstocks is essentially judging the album not on its historical importance, but on its internal coherence and compositional maturity relative to the artist's own later standards.
That makes the bit average critique sting even more. I mean, how can a genre-redefining debut be considered average? The author clarifies that it felt like his most generic hip-hop output.
Right, and we need to unpack what the author means by generic in this context.
Yeah.
It suggests that the truly unique stylistic tics, the emotional complexity and the deeply layered narrative persona that would define albums like the Marshall Mathers LP, which followed just a year later, hadn't fully crystallized yet. While the album certainly introduced the character, Slim Shady, the author implies the composition, and beats occasionally default to more standard late 90s hip-hop tropes.
So the potential was there, but maybe not fully realized across the whole album.
Exactly. The unique, self-effacing, often controversial lyrical complexity was present, but perhaps it lacked the razor-sharp focus and sustained density of his peak work.
So the Quest is penalizing the album for being an important stepping stone rather than a fully realized masterpiece. Greenstocks does acknowledge, though, that it was bold, unique, and fairly well produced. It successfully introduced his sheer technical skill in rap and storytelling, especially with the shock lyrics.
They absolutely gave it a fair hearing. They cited specific tracks that stood out for their quality and narrative power. You got Bonnie and Clyde 97 and My Fault, both deep cuts with compelling dark storytelling, along with As the World Turns, and of course the huge first hit single My Name Is. This shows the author recognizes the album's merits, but finds its overall quality curve, inconsistent.
This segment raises a really important point about the Quest's aesthetic values. If an album is only laying the groundwork for greater things, it struggles against albums that represent the fully realized, high-polished peak output of an artist.
Like Kershaw or Clannad in this group.
Right.
And that's the defining insight here. The raw, early quality, however unique and impactful, was just insufficient to overcome the compositional depth and sustained focus of the 80s pop rock and Celtic folk entries. For the Quest, the blueprint isn't enough.
The completed architectural masterpiece is required.
Exactly. And Eminem, in this group, simply had too much competition in the fully realized album category.
Okay, moving one notch up the ladder, we find the biggest source of internal conflict for Green's to Rocks. In third place, eliminated, is Bryan Adams' Waking Up the Neighbours. This is the album the author bought as a 13-year-old, the emotional centerpiece of their CD collection. For it to rank third shows the enormous difficulty of separating nostalgia from cold, hard critique.
The author had to literally decommission a memory in order to complete this ranking.
Yeah.
But the structural justification for its elimination begins, strangely, not with the album's sound, but with the massive, inescapable chart history set by its lead single.
Everything I do for you.
That's the one.
The chart precedent is just staggering, even decades later. Green's to Rocks describes the significance of that 16-week run at #1 in the UK singles chart.
We have to pause and reflect on that number. 16 weeks.
In the early 90s, 3 weeks was a major hit. 16 weeks, that's 4 solid months. Nearly half a year was completely unprecedented.
It was a cultural monolith. The author recalls this time vividly, mentioning radio DJs essentially resigning themselves to announcing yet again that Bryan Adams was still #1.
It became a running joke.
It became a cultural running joke, a fixture of the summer and fall of 1991, tied intimately to the massive global success of the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves movie.
With Kevin Costner, Morgan Freeman, Alan Rickman. Just a huge film.
Huge. And the anecdote from the source material is gold. It perfectly captures the era.
What's that?
Bryan Adams himself joked that the song only sold 10 million copies because people thought Kevin Costner was singing it.
That's brilliant.
It highlights Costner's pure box office power, showing how the song's success was just inextricably linked to external cinematic marketing and star power, not just the music itself.
And this contextual saturation is important because it explains the author's subsequent fatigue. Yeah. But, okay, let's look at the technical specs of Waking Up the Neighbours. It was his 6th studio album, and it was designed to maximize the new CD format.
Oh, yeah. It was sprawling. 15 tracks running over 74 minutes. It was the definition of maximalist rock.
Double LP territory, basically, but squeezed onto one disc.
And it was helmed by the master of polish, Robert Mutt Lange, known for his work with Def Leppard and AC/DC.
Legend.
The author praises the engineering, saying Bryan's vocal power had arguably never been captured as well. The production values are truly world-class. Every element, the luscious guitar tones, the top-drop bass work, the massive drum sounds, was engineered for arena perfection.
So if the production is world-class, why the elimination?
This is where the critique of excess and fatigue comes in. The flaw, according to Green's to Rocks, is precisely that Mutt Lange's signature, polished, maximalist sound,
which was technically world-class,
actually became the album's technical flaw in the context of this quest. The album, quote, sounds $1,000,000, but limps in a few places due to overall excess fat.
That's a powerful indictment of the CD era itself, isn't it? The capacity afforded by the new format led producers like Lange to just include everything, assuming more equaled better.
But for Green's to Rocks, that quantity diluted the consistent quality that they demand.
They get really specific about it, too.
Extremely specific about the sequencing. They criticize the starting track order, arguing that the first 2 tracks, Is You Mama Gonna Miss Ya and Hey Honey, I'm Packing You In, were weak, slow openers.
What's the suggestion?
The author suggests starting with the genuine hit and high-energy track, Can't Stop This Thing We Started, for better impact. This demonstrates that their fatigue wasn't just emotional, it was a detailed, technical critique of the album's structure.
But the ultimate nail in the coffin, though, is that personal fatigue.
It is. The author admits playing it daily for an entire year in 1992, leading to boredom. That immense overexposure, combined with the structural flaws of excess tracks, means that even 30 years later, they are still in a place where I can take it or leave it.
Finding portions of it tired or generic.
Yeah. The sheer quantity created a level of saturation that the album could never recover from, even if some individual tracks remain excellent.
And those excellent tracks are acknowledged. Thought I'd died and gone to heaven, vanishing. All I want is you, house arrest.
There Will Never Be Another Tonight. They're great songs, elevated by the musicianship. But ultimately, the conclusion holds. Despite the quality, the excess means it falls substantially behind the two albums that demonstrated greater compositional focus and sustaining power.
So nostalgia may have gotten it into the quest, but critical fatigue eliminated it.
Perfectly put.
Now we shift focus to the two albums that successfully secured their spot in round 3. We'll start with the close runner-up in second place, Clannad's Landmarks.
And this album operates in an entirely different aesthetic universe from the mainstream rock we just discussed.
And that's precisely why it won.
I think so. It secured its victory through atmosphere and texture. The author describes Landmarks not as a standard rock album, but as a true listening experience, using these evocative adjectives like absorbing and beguiling.
So that means the album's primary strength isn't individual tracks or big hooks.
No.
It's its ability to create a consistent, transporting environment for the listener.
Right. And there is that curious conflict in the author's assessment, which I think shows their rigorous honesty. They note that compared to previous Clannad works, Landmarks can initially seem a bit shallower or sporadic.
Like an impromptu folk session.
Yeah, sometimes feeling more like that than a polished studio record. But they immediately pivot to its defense. What it might lack in overt structural depth compared to a classic 80s album, it more than makes up for in quality and execution.
And this is where the technical critique shines. It's the execution of the sound, the instrumentation, that elevates it far above the standard range of rock instruments used in the Bryan Adams critique.
Let's delve into that instrumentation, because this is the key insight into the album's success in the quest. Clannad utilizes beautiful, less conventional instruments in this context,
Flutes and clarinets.
weaving them into the folk tapestry. And crucially, they don't just stick to acoustic elements. Greenstocks notes the subtle but effective integration of expert electronic guitar passages and gentle piano work.
So it's a synthesis.
It's a synthesis. The marriage of ancient Celtic sounds with modern electronic textures is what makes the atmosphere so unique and compelling.
And the resulting atmosphere is the winning element. It conjures an audible forest-setting atmosphere, placing the listener deep in the woods away from modern distractions.
It's an immersive, almost cinematic quality that demands the listener's attention, in a way that Bryan Adams' album, despite its high polish, failed to do consistently across its vast length.
So the ability of Landmarks to create an entire believable world is why it qualified above the technically flawless but overstuffed Bryan Adams record.
Absolutely. It prioritizes subtlety, mood, and compositional variety over sheer volume and polish. In the context of the album quest, this means Clan achieved compositional mastery through focused artistry, securing a vital spot in round 3.
And finally, the #1 spot in this highly competitive round 2, Group 40, goes to the artist who started his career in the 80s, Nick Kershaw, with Radio Musicola. This is a fascinating winner because it really challenges the conventional wisdom that popularity equals quality.
Kershaw immediately signals his artistic intent here, demonstrating a complexity that Greenstocks values very highly. The author notes that the driving jazz-fused drum and rhythm section of the opening title track, it tells you instantly that Radio Musicola is designed to be a little different.
It's not his earlier, later pop hits.
No, this is sophisticated adult pop music.
And the author lays out a really strong case for Kershaw's victory, citing these core artistic strengths.
Yeah, things like modernistic compositions, innovative delivery, impressive arrangements, and highly varied instrumentation. This just confirms that the album met that high compositional standard set by the 80s luminary albums we talked about earlier.
And beyond the music, the lyrical content is praised for its depth. Greenstocks specifically points out clever anti-establishment rhetoric and insightful lyrical concepts.
So this isn't just catchy music, it's smart music. It's designed to provoke thought while remaining immensely listenable. It is described as an immersive and thoroughly enjoyable experience.
It hits that sweet spot.
It does, between technical merit and audience engagement.
However, this victory brings the commercial paradox front and center, because Musicola was widely regarded as a sharp commercial truncation following Kershaw's glittering start with Human Racing and The Riddle.
It was. The first single, Nobody Knows, failed to even hit the top 40, and the album commercially flopped.
So this is the critical tension. The author, Greenstocks, argues strongly that Musicola is a far superior product to Kershaw's earlier chart-topping work.
And they are prioritizing artistic and compositional evolution over commercial performance. This is perhaps the most defining characteristic of the entire album quest.
Right. Artistic merit, defined by the author's own high standards, trumps all sales metrics.
It makes you wonder about the pressure placed on artists in that era. The author even speculates on the career decline, questioning whether Kershaw didn't get on with his record industry overlords.
Was this a case where Kershaw chose artistic integrity and complexity over the commercial demands of just repeating his earlier success?
That narrative, the misunderstood genius whose best work was rejected by the system, it adds this compelling layer of intrigue to the victory. It suggests the author sees Radio Musicola as a vindication of artistic freedom.
And they confirm this is an album they intend to explore further. They note they've heard his 1989 album, The Works, is also highly rated by fans.
Ultimately, the album is confirmed as a truly superb pop rock album that barely puts a foot wrong. And the track selection is lauded, citing 3 key sumptuous compositions. Life Goes On, which showcases the depth of the arrangements,
And James Cagney and What the Papers Say,
which likely contains that clever anti-establishment rhetoric.
So for Radio Musicola to defeat the high production of Bryan Adams, the undeniable atmospheric quality of Clannad, and the raw impact of Eminem's debut, it needed to be a sustained, focused, and compositionally complex piece of work.
The exact characteristics Green Starox established as their standard back in the luminary 80s era. Kershaw provided the pinnacle of thoughtful, complex pop rock in this group.
So we have the final definitive rankings for round 2, Group 40. Nick Kershaw triumphs at number 1, followed by Clannad. Bryan Adams, despite all that nostalgia, falls to 3rd, and Eminem, the debut, ranks 4th.
But Green Starox's analysis doesn't end with the music itself. They also turn their critical eye toward the structure of the quest.
And this is where the meta-analysis comes in. When you subject music to this kind of long-running structured randomization, patterns and anomalies start to emerge.
And the author caught a big one, related to their own musical preferences, that penchant for 70s and 80s albums.
What's the observation?
The observation concerns release dates. They realize that Group 40 is only the second group they have encountered in 40 Round 2 contest, where all 4 albums were released before the year 2000.
The second out of 40.
Yes. And this is statistically fascinating in a random selection.
To put that in perspective, while Landmarks from 97 and the Slim Shady LP from 99 barely sneak in before the millennium, the author really expected more post-2000 releases to mix in, just given the sheer volume of albums produced since then.
And they contrast this finding with Group 29, which was the only other similar instance, but that one still included 3 1990s efforts. The author is genuinely surprised to find a clustering of albums so heavily weighted toward their preferred era, the 70s and 80s, facing off against each other relatively late in the competition structure.
And this raises an important, critical question for the quest's methodology. Is the randomizer unintentionally creating a kind of echo chamber?
Green Starox speculates on that exactly.
Yeah.
Is the randomizer bunching up all the 70s and 80s albums for later rounds?
That structural insight provides a fascinating final layer of analysis.
It does. If the randomization process is inadvertently creating blocks of albums from specific similar eras, it means the deeper rounds of the quest might feature incredibly intense clashes between the truly venerated older classics.
So instead of gradual attrition across all eras, we might see the biggest battles between the albums the author loves most concentrated into the final stages.
Exactly. It shows the methodology is a dynamic system constantly under scrutiny, even by the person conducting the quest.
This has been an intensely personal and structurally rigorous album quest. The journey through Group 40 really highlighted the profound tension between artistic integrity and commercial success.
We saw the painful elimination of Bryan Adams' Waking Up the Neighbors, proving that personal nostalgia and world-class production are not enough to defeat critical fatigue and excess fat.
And we analyzed the elimination of Eminem's Slim Shady LP, which showed that in this quest, foundational stepping stones are penalized when compared to fully realized artistic peaks. And we celebrated the qualifiers. Clannad's Landmarks, which won on atmosphere, sophisticated instrumentation, and its ability to transport the listener into that audible forest setting.
And the group winner, Nick Kershaw's Radio Musicola, a complex pop rock album that, despite its commercial failure, was ultimately deemed a far superior product.
The album quest shows us that the true measure of an album isn't about immediate success, but its ability to sustain quality across decades, surviving overexposure and critical reappraisal.
The author demands consistency, sophistication, and compositional focus.
Absolutely. And as we leave this quest, let's circle back to that phenomenal record-breaking chart run by Bryan Adams. 16 weeks at #1 was a complete precedent, something unheard of in its time, becoming the subject of jokes and myth-making among radio DJs.
Yeah, that kind of historical chart longevity is simply not replicable today due to the extreme velocity of streaming data and the constant turnover in playlists. We saw that the author's fascination centered on this massive, culturally significant anomaly.